I'll make that the hour. Ooh, okay. So, hello, of course, to anyone who is here. I never know if you are, but I assume sometimes some people are. So, oh, hello! Hey, thank you, Ivy. Yeah, I did them myself, with my very limited abilities as a rat. So, yeah. We also have, let's go through my screens then real quick. We've got, I'll be right back screen. We've got my intermission screen and my leaving screen. Yeah, thank you for stopping by, I appreciate it. What are we doing? Ah, yes. Ah, I'm levitating. Why am I levitating? This is bad. I'm also on the wrong screen. Ugh. I will never change the style of them. I will occasionally change the content of them because it's funny to me. But yeah. Ooh, where are we? Ah, yes. But yeah, today we are... What are we doing? I've been thrown off my little pad. Yeah, so... First of all, for anyone who doesn't know, my name is SkitterSkreetch. You can call me Skitter. I am here in It's Cursed Library. Again, this is not the old Cursed Library, this is just a section of it. I do this every time. I don't know if people know what I think my whole deal is, but yeah. And I read various books at the compulsion of this here lamp. It makes me do it for reasons that are beyond me. Anyway, little power over. Today we are going to be reading this book here, which is The Man Who Corrupted Hadleyburg by Mark Twain, which is fairly long. Some of these ones here we've had are have been very short stories. This one's pretty long. Yeah, that's Lamp. He, what do we know about Lamp? Lamp used to be a guy, and then he was murdered by some wizards, and they made him into a lamp for various reasons that are sort of too complex to go into. But yeah, and he is the one who compels me to do this because there's no food in this library. Yeah, there's no food in this library, and he can conjure cheese, and he will only do it if I read books. Why, I don't know. How this works, I don't know. I don't know exactly why it's cheese always, but it is always cheese. Yeah, many things going on. I don't know what most of them is. I'm a rat who can talk. But yeah. Anywho, what was I saying? Oh yeah, but yeah, today we got Man Who Corrupted Hadleyburg, Mark Twain. This one's a novella, I guess. Or yeah, it's like not long enough quite to be a novel. Oh, and thank you for the follow up. I just noticed that. I don't have good alerts turned on. Oh, which reminds me, I'm also meant to thank Mothman 420 for following me because they followed me in between streams. Always got to thank the followers. Very important, I'm told. But yeah, Man Who Corrupted Hadleyburg, novella. Yeah, it's probably going to be hour and a half, 2 hours worth of text. So yeah, lock in. Hopefully this is some of the good Twain, because if not, well, then it won't be very good, will it? Let's get into it. Where are we? Man Who Corrupted Hadleyburg. Here we go. Oop. As always, if anyone needs me to slow down or go back over something that they've missed, or just ask some questions, feel free to ask me in the chat. I will probably, I don't know if this is broken down into little chapters, but there's a little one section at the front, so hopefully it will be, and then I'll stop every now and then to take a drink and go over what we've read so far and do a little bit of talking. And because the edition we're currently reading, this little section of Twain's will have a little bit of biographic information behind them, so we'll go over that before we start. And yeah, but without further ado, unless there is any questions or any pressing needs that anyone has of me, let's get into it. The Man That Corrupted Hadleyburg. Written at the end of a disastrous decade in which Twain were forced to declare bankruptcy, faced a debt close to $100,000, and mourned the death of his favourite daughter, The Man That Corrupted Hadleyburg reflects Twain's increasing cynicism about the hypocrisy of society. The story was first published in Harper magazine in December of 1899, and appeared in The Man That Corrupted Hadleyburg and Other Stories and Essays from Harper Brothers, New York and London in 1900. Wow. Maybe not the happiest one, but we'll see how we go on. It were many years ago that Hadleyburg was the most honest and upright town in all the region around it. It had kept that reputation unbesmirched during 3 generations, and were prouder of it than of any of its other possessions. It was so proud of it, and so anxious to ensure its perpetuation, that it began to teach the principles of honest dealing to its babies in the cradle, and made the like teachings a staple of their culture henceforward through all the years devoted to their education. Also, throughout the formative years, temptations were kept out of the way of the young people, so their honesty could have every chance to harden and solidify, and become part of their very bone. Neighbouring towns were jealous of this honourable supremacy, and affected to sneer at Hadleyburg's pride in it and call it vanity. All the same, they were obliged to acknowledge that Hadleyburg was in reality an incorruptible town. And if pressed, they would also acknowledge that the mere fact that a young man hailed from Hadleyburg was all the recommendation he needed when he went forth from his natural town to seek it for responsible employment. But at last, in the drift of time, Hadleyburg had the ill luck to offend a passing stranger, possibly without knowing it, certainly without caring, for Hadleyburg was sufficient unto itself, and cared not a rap for strangers or their opinions. Still, it would have been well to make an exception in this one's case, for he were a bitter man and revengeful. All through his wanderings during a whole year he kept his injury in mind, and gave all his leisure moments to trying to invent a compensating satisfaction for it. He contrived many plans, and all of them were good, but none of them were quite sweeping enough. The poorest of them would hurt a great many individuals, but he wanted a plan which would comprehend the entire town, and not let so much as one person escape unhurt. At last he had a fortunate idea, and when it fell into his brain, he lit up his old head with an evil joy. When he began to form the plan at once, saying to himself, "That is the thing to do. I will corrupt the town." 6 months later he went to Hadleyburg, and arrived in a buggy at the house of the old cashier of the bank about 10 at night. He got a sack out of the buggy, shouldered it and staggered with it through a cottage yard and knocked at the door. A woman's voice said, "Come in," and he entered and set his sack behind the stove in the parlour, saying politely to the old lady who sat reading the Missionary Herald by the lamp, "Pray, keep your seat, ma'am, I will not disturb you. There now, it's pretty well concealed. One would hardly know it were there. Can I see your husband a moment, ma'am?" "No, he was gone to Brixton, and might not return before morning." "Very well, ma'am, here's no matter. I merely wanted to leave this sack in his care, to be delivered to the rightful owner when he shall be found. I'm a stranger, he does not know me. I'm merely passing through the town tonight to discharge the matter which has been long on my mind. My errand is not completed. I go pleased and a little proud that you will never see me again. There is a paper attached to the sack which will explain everything. Good night, ma'am." The old lady were afraid of the mysterious big stranger, and were glad to see him go, but her curiosity were roused, and she went straight to the sack and brought away the paper. It began as follows: "To be published, or the right man sought out by private inquiry, either will answer. This sack contains gold coin weighing 160 pounds 4 ounces. Mercy on us, and the door not locked." Miss Richard flew to it and all trembled and locked it, and pulled down the window shades and stood frightened, worried and wondering if there was anything else she could do towards making herself and the money more safe. She listened a while for burglars, then surrendered to curiosity and went back to the lamp and finished reading the paper. "I am a foreigner, and am presently going back to my own country to remain there permanently. I am grateful to America for what I have received at her hands during my long stay under her flag, and one of her citizens, a citizen of Hadleyburg, I am especially grateful for a great kindness done me a year or two ago. 2 great kindnesses, in fact. I will explain. I was a gambler. I say I was a ruined gambler. I arrived in this village at night, hungry and without a penny. I asked for help, in the dark. I was ashamed to beg in the light. I begged of the right man. He gave me $20, that is to say, he gave me a life, as I considered it. He also gave me a fortune, for out of that money I have made myself rich in the gambling table. And finally a remark which he made to me has remained with me to this day. He has at last conquered me, and in conquering he has saved the remnant moral of my morals. I shall gamble no more. Now I have no idea who the man was, but I want him found, and I want him to have this money to give away, throw away, or keep, as he pleases. It's merely my way of testifying my gratitude to him. If I could stay, I would find him myself, but no matter, he will be found. This is an honest town, an incorruptible town, and I know I can trust it without fear. This man can be identified to borrow the remark which he made to me. I feel persuaded that he will remember it. And now my plan is this. If you prefer to conduct the inquiry, I'm gonna. Right. Thanks. I'll take that in that spirit, and I'm definitely not considering the post you made on Twitter about milking a mouse earlier, as you put licking emotes right next to me. I do appreciate that. For those who are keeping track, the water today is cold and normal, which is a nice change. Oh, that was less. For some reason, I was in my head that was honey, or that was ivy. Look, but no, thank you, Les. I didn't think of that. But yeah, good cold water today. No weird alchemicals in it, which is a noted improvement. No, that was And now my plan is this: if you prefer to conduct the inquiry privately, do so. Tell the contents of this present writing to anyone who is likely to be the right man. If he shall answer, "I am the man, the remark I made was so and so," apply the test to it. Open the sack, and in it you will find a sealed envelope containing that remark. If the remark mentioned by that candidate tallies with it, give him the money and ask no further questions, for he is certainly the right man. Ah, I appreciate it. Ooh, I'm not used to having people here. It's strange. Normally I'm reading to empty air. But it's nice. I do appreciate you yourself and puff, but yeah. But if you should prefer a public inquiry, then publish the present writing in the local paper, with these instructions how to do it. 30 days from now, let the candidate appear at the town hall at 8 in the evening, Friday, and hand his remark in a sealed envelope to the Reverend Mr. Burgess, if he'll be kind enough to act. And let Mr. Burgess there and then destroy the seals of the sack and open it, and see if the remark correct. If correct, let the money be delivered with my sincere gratitude to my benefactor thus identified. Miss Richards sat down, gently quivering with excitement, and was soon lost in things. After this pattern, what a strange thing it is, and what a fortune for that kind man who set his bread afloat upon the waters. If it had only been my husband that did it, for we are so poor, so old and poor. Then with a sigh, it was not my Edward. No, it was not he that gave a stranger $20. It's a pity too, I see it now. Then with a shudder, but it is gambler's money, the wages of sin. We couldn't take it, we wouldn't touch it. I don't like to be near it, it seemed a defilement. She moved to her farther chair. I wish Edward would come and take it to the bank. A burglar might come at any moment. It is dreadful to be here alone with it. At 11, Mr. Richard arrived, and while his wife was saying, I'm so glad you've come, he was saying, I'm so tired. Tired clear out. It's dreadful to be poor and to have to make these dark, dismal journeys at my time of life. Always at the grind on a salary. Another man's slave, and he sitting at home in his slippers, rich and comfortable. I'm so sorry for you, Edward. You know that. But be comforted. We have our livelihood. We have our good name. Yes, Mary, and that is everything. Don't mind my talk. It's just a moment's irritation. It doesn't mean anything. Kiss me. There, it's all gone. I am not complaining anymore. What have you been getting? What's in the sack? Then his wife told him the great secret. It dazed him for a moment, then he said, It weighs 160 pounds? Why, Mary, it's $40,000. Think of it, a whole fortune. Not 10 men in this village are worth that much. Give me the paper. He skimmed through it and said, Isn't it an adventure? Why, it's a romance. It's like the impossible things one reads about in a book and never sees in life. He was well stirred up now, cheerful, even gleeful. He tapped his old wife on the cheek and said humorously, Why, we're rich, Mary, rich. All we've got to do is bury the money and burn the paper. If the gambler ever comes to inquire, we'll merely look coldly upon him and say, What is this nonsense you are talking? We've never heard of you and your sack of gold before, and then we look foolish, and in the meantime, while you are running on with your jokes, the money is still here and is fast getting along towards burglar time. True. Very well. What shall we do? Make the inquiry private? No, not that. It would spoil the romance. The public method is better. Think what a noise it will make, and it will make all the other towns jealous, for no stranger would do such a thing to any town but Hadleyburg, and they know it. It's a great card for us. I must get to the printing office now, or I shall be too late. But stop! Don't leave it here alone with it. Me here alone with it, Edward. He were gone. For only a little while, however. Not far from his own house, he met the editor proprietor of the paper and gave him the document and said, Here is a good thing for you, for you Cox, put it in. It may be too late, Richards. I'll see. At home again, he and his wife sat down and talked the charming mystery over. They were in no condition for sleep. The first question was, who could be the citizen who had given the stranger the $20? It seemed a simple one. Both answered in the same breath. Barclay Godson. Yes, said Richard, he could have done it. I would have been like him, but there's not another in the town. Everybody will grant it, Edward. Granted privately, Edward. Anyway, for 6 months now, the village has been its own proper self once more. Honest, narrow, self-righteous, and stingy. It is what he always called it to that day of his death, and said it right out publicly, too. Yes, and of course he was hated for it. Of course, but he didn't care. I reckon he was the best-hated man among us, except that Reverend Burgess. Well, Burgess deserves it. He will never get a congregation here. Mean as the town is, it knows how to estimate him. Edward doesn't seem odd that the stranger should appoint Burgess to deliver the money. Well, yes, it does. That is... Why so much that is in? Would you select him? Mary, maybe the stranger knows him better than the village does. Much that would help Burgess. The husband seemed perplexed for an answer. The wife kept a steady eye upon him and waited. Finally, Richard said, with the latency of one who is making a statement which is likely to encounter doubt, Mary, Burgess is not a bad man. His wife was certainly surprised. Nonsense, she exclaimed. He's not a bad man. I know the whole of his unpopularity had its foundation in that one thing. The thing that made so much noise. That one thing indeed, as if that one thing wasn't enough all by itself. Plenty. Only he wasn't guilty of it. How you talk, not guilty of it. Everybody knows he was guilty. Mary, I give you my word, he was innocent. I can't believe it, and I don't. How do you know? It is a confession. I'm ashamed, but I will make it. I was the only man who knew he was innocent. I could have saved him, and well, you know, the town was wrought up. I hadn't the pluck to do it. Would have turned everybody against me. I felt mean, ever so mean, but I didn't dare. I hadn't the manliness to face that. Mary looked troubled and for a while was silent, and then she said, stammeringly, I don't think it would have done for you to do. One mustn't. Public opinion, one has to be so careful. It was a difficult road and she got marred. After a little while she started again. It was a great pity, but why we couldn't afford it, Edward, we couldn't indeed. Oh, I wouldn't have put for you to do anything. They would have lost us the goodwill of many people, Mary, and then. What troubles me now is what he thinks of us, Edward. He doesn't suspect that I could have saved him. Oh, exclaimed the wife in a tone of relief. I'm glad of that. As long as he doesn't know that you could have saved him, oh, well, that makes sense. Makes it a great deal better. I might have known he didn't know, because he's always trying to be friendly with us, as a little encouragement as we give him. More than once people have twitted me with it. There's the Wilsons, the Wilcoxes, the Harknesses. They take a mean pleasure in saying, your friend Burgess, because they know it pesters me. I wish he wouldn't persist in liking us so. I can't think why he keeps it up. I can explain it. It's another confession. When the thing was new and hot and the town made a plan to ride him on a rail, my conscience hurt me so that I couldn't stand it. And I went privately and gave him notice, and he got out of the town and stayed out till it was safe to come back. Edward, if the town had found out, don't! It scares me yet to think of it. I repented of it the minute I was done, and I was even afraid to tell you, lest your face might betray it to somebody. I didn't sleep any that night for worrying, but after a few days I saw that no one was going to suspect me, and after that I got a feeling glad I did it. And I feel glad yet, Mary. Glad through and through. So do I, now, for it would really have been a dreadful way to treat him. Yes, I'm glad, for really, you did owe him that, you know. But Edward, suppose it should come out yet someday. It won't. Why? Because everyone thinks it was Goodson. Of course they would. Certainly. And of course he did care. They persuaded poor old Salisbury to go and charge it on him, and he went blustering over there and did it. Goodson looked him over, as if he was hunting for a place to hit him that he could despise the most, but then he says, so you're the committee of inquiry, aren't you? Salisbury said that was about what he was. Do they require particulars, or do you reckon a kind of general answer will do? They require particulars. I will come back, Mr. Goodson. I will take the general answer first. Very well, then. Tell them to go to hell. I reckon that's general enough. And I'll give you some advice, Salisbury. When you come back for particulars, fetch a basket to carry the relics of yourself home in. Just like Goodson. He's got all the marks. He has only one vanity. He thought he could give advice better than any other person. It settled the business and saved us, Mary. The subject was dropped. Bless you, I'm not doubting that. Then she took up the gold sack mystery again, with strong interest. Soon the conversation began to suffer breaks, interruptions caused by absorbed thinking. The breaks grew more and more frequent. At last Richard lost himself wholly in thought. He sat long, gazing vacantly at the floor, and by he began to punctuate his thoughts with little nervous movements of his hands that seemed to indicate vexation. Meantime his wife too had relapsed into a thoughtful silence, and her movements were beginning to show troubled discomfort. Finally Richard got up and strode aimlessly about the room, ploughing his hand through his hair, much as a somnambulist might do who was having a bad dream. Then he seemed to arrive at a definite purpose, and without a word he put on his hat and passed quickly out of the house. His wife sat brooding, with a drawn face, and did not seem to be aware if she was alone. Now and then she murmured, "Lead us not into... but we are so poor, so poor. Lead us not into... we would be hurt by it. No one would ever know. Lead us..." The voice died out in mumblings. After a little she glanced up and muttered in half frightened, half glad way, "He's gone. But oh my dear, you may be too late." Too late? Maybe not. Maybe there's still time. She rose and stood thinking nervously, clasping and unclasping her hands. A slight shudder shook her frame, and she said out her dry throat, "Lord, forgive me. It's awful to think such things, but Lord, how are we made? How strangely we are made." She turned the light low and slipped stealthily over and kneeled down by the sack and felt its ridgy sides with her hands, and fondled them lovingly. And there were a glowing light in her poor old eyes. She fell into fits of absence and came off out of them at times to mutter, "If only we had waited. Oh, if only we had waited a little and not been in such a hurry." Meantime Cox had gone home from his office and told his wife all about the strange thing that had happened, and they had talked it over eagerly and guessed that the late Goodson was the only man in town who could have helped the suffering stranger with so noble a sum as $20. Then there were a pause, and the two became thoughtful and silent, and by, nervous and fidgety. At last the wife said to herself, "Nobody knows the secret but the Richardses and us. Nobody." The husband came out of his thinking with a slight start and gazed wistfully at his wife. His face would become very pale. Then he hesitatingly rose and glanced furtively at his hat, then at his wife, a sort of mute inquiry. Mrs. Cox swallowed once or twice with her hand at her throat, and in the place of speech she nodded her head. In a moment she were alone and mumbling to herself. And now Richard and Cox were hurrying through the deserted streets from opposite directions. They met panting at the front of the printing office stairs. By the nightlight, they each read each other's faces. Cox whispered, "Nobody knows about this but us." The whisper was answered, "Not a soul, oh no, not a soul. If it isn't too late to..." The men were starting upstairs. At this moment, they were overtaken by a boy, and Cox asked, "Is that you, Johnny?" "Yes, sir." "You didn't ship the early mail, nor any mail. Wait till I tell you." "It's already gone, sir." "Gone?" Had the sound of unspeakable disappointment in it. "Yes, sir. Timetable for Brixton and all the towns beyond changed today, sir. Had to get the papers in 20 minutes earlier than common. I had to rush. If I'd been 2 minutes later..." The men turned and walked slowly away, not wanting to hear the rest. Neither of them spoke during the 10 minutes. Then Cox said in a vexed tone, "What possessed you to be in such a hurry? I can't make out." The answer was humble enough. "I see it now, but somehow I never thought, till it was too late. But the next time be hanged. It won't come in 1,000 years." Then their friends separated without good night and dragged themselves home with the gait of mortally stricken men. At their homes, their wife sprang up with an eager "Well?" and then saw the answer with her eyes and sank down sorrowing, without waiting for it to come out in words. In both houses, a discussion followed, of a heated sort, a new thing. There had been discussion before, but not heated ones, not ungentle ones. The discussions tonight were a sort of semen plagiarism of each other. Mrs. Richardson said, "If only you had not waited, Edward, if you had only stopped to think. But no, you must run straight into the printing office and spread it all over the world." "It said publish it." "That is nothing. It also said to do it privately if you liked." "There now, is that true or not?" "Why, yes, it is true, but when I thought what a stir it would make, and what the compliment was to Hadleyburg that a stranger had trusted her..." "Oh, certainly, I know all that. But if you had only stopped to think, you would have seen that you couldn't find the right man because he is in his grave, hasn't left a chicken or child relation behind him. And as long as the money went to somebody that awfully needed it, nobody would be hurt by it, and... She broke down crying. Her husband tried to think of some comforting thing to say, and presently came up with this. "But after all, Mary, it must be for the best. It must be. We know that, and we must remember that. It was so ordered. Ordered. Oh, everything's ordered when a person has to find some way out when he's been stupid. Just the same, it was ordered that the money should come to us in this special way, and it was you that must take it on yourself to go meddling with the designs of Providence. And who gave you the right? It was wicked, that's what it was, just blasphemous presumption, and no more becoming to a meek and humble professor. But Mary, you know we've been trained in it all our lives long, like the old village, till it's absolutely second nature to us. We stop not a single moment to think when there's an honest thing to be done. Oh, I know it. It's been one everlasting training in honesty. Honesty shielded from the very cradle. It's every possible temptation. And it's so artificial honesty, and weak as water when temptation comes, as we have seen this night. God knows, I never had a shade nor shadow of doubt of my petrified and indestructible honesty until now. And now, under the very first big and real temptation, Edward, it is my belief this town's honesty is as rotten as mine is. As rotten as yours is. It is a mean town, a hard, stingy town, and hasn't a virtue in the world with this honesty. It's so celebrated for and so conceited about. And so help me, I do believe that if ever the day comes that its honesty fails under great temptation, its grand reputation will go to ruin like a house of cards. There, now I've made my confession, I feel better. I am a humbug, and I've been one all my life without knowing it. Let no man call me honest again, I will not have it. Why, Mary, I feel a great deal as you do. I certainly do. It seems strange, too, so strange. I never could have believed it, never. A long silence followed. Both were sunk in thought. At last, the wife looked up and said, "I know what you're thinking, Edward." Richard had the embarrassed look of a person who's caught. "I'm ashamed to confess it, Mary, but it's no matter, Edward. I was thinking the same question myself." "I hope so. State it." "You were thinking if a body could only guess out what the remark was that Goodson made to the stranger." "It's perfectly true. I feel guilty and ashamed. And you?" "I'm past it. Let's make a pallet here. We've got to stand to watch till the bank vault opens in the morning and nix the sack. Oh dear, we hadn't made the mistake." The pallet were made, and Mary said, "The open sesame, what could it have been? I do wonder what that remark could have been. But come, we will go to bed now." "And sleep?" "No, think." "Yes, think." By this time the Coxes too had completed their spat and their reconciliation, and were turning in, to think, to toss and fret and worry over what the remark could possibly have been which Godson had made to the stranded derelict. A golden remark, that remark worth $40,000 cash. The reason the village telegraph office were open later than usual this night was this. The foreman of Cox's paper was the local representative of the Associated Press. One might say it's honorary representative, for it wasn't 4 times a year that he could furnish 30 words that would be accepted. But this time it was different. His dispatch stating what had caught got an instant answer. Send the whole thing, all the details, 1,200 words. A colossal order. The foreman filled the bill, and and he was the proudest man in the state. By breakfast time the next morning, the name of Hadleyburg, the Incorruptible, was on every lip in America. From Montreal to the Gulf, from the glaciers of Alaska, the orange groves of Florida, and millions of people were discussing the stranger and his money sack, and wondering if the right man would be found, and hoping some more news about the matter will come soon, right away. That's the end of part 1. Ooh. I'll take my little standard drink now. So I think we can already see sort of the shape of this scheme that's, shaping up, I suppose. Big pile of money, mysterious, phrase that the supposed benefactor of the man left with, and of course a whole town of people so moral, so virtuous, who are going to be losing their minds trying to get a hold of the sack of money. The real question is, will they just be trying to get the money by lying and claiming to have been the man who gave the $20, or will there be schemes and cunnings to try and steal the money in other such ways? I suppose there's only one way to find out. I'm trying to think if there's anything particularly notable to refer to. I guess just a comment that, of course, this was published just about 1900, so $40,000 is significantly more then than it is now, and it's not a small amount of money now. Yeah, I think that's about the shape of it. So, unless anyone has any questions or comments, then I'll press on without further ado. Part the second. Hadleyburg village woke up, world celebrated, astounded, happy, vain. Vain beyond imagination. Its 19 principal citizens and their wives went about shaking hands with each other, and beaming and smiling and congratulating and saying this thing adds a new word to the dictionary. Hadleyburg, a synonym for incorruptible, destined to live in dictionaries forever. And the minor and unimportant citizens and their wives went around acting in much the same way. Everybody ran to the bank to see the gold sack, and before noon grieved and envious crowds began to flock in from Brixton and all neighbouring towns. And that afternoon and next day reporters began to arrive from everywhere to verify the sack and its history, and write the whole thing up anew, and make dashing freehand pictures of the sack, and of Richardson's house, and of Richard's house, and the bank, and the Presbyterian church, and the Baptist church, and the public square, and the town hall where the press would be applied, and the money delivered, and damnable portraits of the Richards and Pinkerton, and the banker, and Cox, and the foreman, and Reverend Burgess, and the postmaster, and even the Jack Halliday, who was a loafing, good-natured, no-account, fervent, irreverent fisherman, hunter boy, friend, typical Sam Lawson of the town. The little mean, smirking, oily Pinkerton showed the sack to all comers, and rubbed his sleek palms together pleasantly, and enlarged upon the town's final reputation for honesty and upon this wonderful endorsement of it, and hoped to believe that the example would now spread far and wide over the American world, and be epoch-making in the matter of moral regeneration, and so on, and so on. By the end of a week, things had quieted down again. The wild intoxication of pride and joy had sobered to a soft, sweet, silent delight, a sort of deep, nameless, utterable content. All faces bore a look of peaceful, holy happiness. And a change come. It were a gradual change, so gradual that its beginnings were hardly noticed. Maybe were not noticed at all, except by Jack Halliday, who always noticed everything and always made fun of it too, no matter what it was. He began to throw out chaffing remarks about people not looking quite so happy as they did a day ago, or so ago. And next he claimed the new aspect was the deepening of positive sadness. Next it would take on a sick look, and finally he said that everybody would become so moody, thoughtful and absent-minded that he could rob the meanest man in town of a cent out of the bottom of his breeches pocket and not disturb his reverie. At this stage, or about this stage, a stay-on were dropped at bedtime, with a sigh usually, by the head of each of the 19 principal households. What could have been the remark that Goodson made? And straight away, with a shudder, come this from the man's wife. "Oh, don't! What horrible things are muddling your mind? Pull away from you, for God's sake." That question was wrung from these men again the next night, and got the same retort, but weaker. And the third night the men uttered the question yet again, with anguish and absently. This time, and the following night, the wives fidgeted feebly and tried to say something, but didn't. And the night after that they found their tongues and responded longingly, "Oh, if we could only guess." Halliday's comments grew daily more and more sparklingly disagreeable and disparaging. He went diligently about, laughing at the town, individually en masse. But his laugh was the only one left in the village. It fell upon an hollow and moody vacancy and emptiness. Not even a smile was findable anywhere. Halliday carried a cigar box around on a tripod, playing it with a camera, and out with all passers by and aimed the thing at them and said, Ready now and look pleasant, please. But not even this cattle joke could surprise the dreary faces into any softening. So 3 weeks passed. 1 week were left. It was Saturday evening after supper. Instead of your full-time Saturday evening flutter and bustle and shopping and larking, the streets were empty and desolate. Richard and his old wife sat apart in their little parlour, miserable and thinking. This would become their evening habit now, the lifelong habit which had preceded it of reading, knitting and contented chat, or receiving or paying neighbourly calls, were dead and gone and forgotten, ages ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago. Nobody talked now, nobody read, nobody visited the old village chat up there, nobody visited. The old village sat at home, sighing, worrying, silent, trying to guess out that remark. A postman left a letter. Richard glanced listlessly at the superscription and the postmark, unfamiliar both, and tossed the letter on the table and resumed his might-have-beens and his hopeless dull miseries where he had left them off. 2 or 3 hours later his wife got wearily up and was going away to bed, without a good night, custom now. But she stopped near the letter and eyed it a while with dread interest, then broke it open and began to skim over it. Richard, sitting there with his chair tilted back against the wall and his chin between his knees, heard something fall. It was his wife. He sprang to her side, but she cried out, "Leave me alone, I am too happy. Read the letter, read it." He did. He devoured it, his brain reeling. A letter from a distant state, and it said, "I am a stranger to you, but no matter. I have something to tell. I have just arrived home from Mexico and learned about that episode. Of course you do not know who made that remark, but I know, and I am the only person living who does know it. It were Goodson. I knew him well many years ago. I passed through your village that very night and was his guest till the midnight train come along. I overheard him make the remark of the stranger in the dark. He was in Ale Alley. He and I talked of it the rest of the way home, and while smoking in his house he mentioned many of your villagers in the course of his talk, most of them in a very uncomplimentary way, but 2 or 3 favourably. Among these latter yourself. I see favourably, nothing stronger. I remember his saying he did not actually like any person in town, not one. That you, I think he said you, or more sure, had done him a very great service once, possibly without knowing the full value of it, and he wished he had a fortune he would leave it to you so when he died, and a curse piece for the rest of the citizens. Now then, if it were you that did him that service, you are his legitimate heir, and entitled to the sack of gold. I know that I can trust to your honour and honesty. For a citizen of Hadleyburg, these virtues are an unfailing inheritance, and so I am going to reveal to you the remark, well satisfied that if you are not the right man, you will seek and find the right one, and see that poor Godson's debt of gratitude for the service rendered is paid. This is the remark. You are far from being a bad man. Go and reform. Howard L. Stevenson. Just going to take a moment there to appreciate the twist. I didn't foresee that one coming. I'm always happy to take suggestions and that. I am somewhat limited in that I do read physical books, and I'm stuck to things published prior to 1957 because of copyright law. But yeah, if you want to drop a recommendation, I'd be happy to hear it. Yeah, it's crazy how long things are in copyright, and that's the old law. It's worse now. Anything published since 1978 is in copyright the entire life of the author, and then 70 years afterwards. Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. Yeah. Well, what you got? I'll look into it and I'll see if I can find. Well, I assume it's published past the date. If I can find anything similar. Oh, the book thief by Zusek. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. Well, I am stuck with it, but I'll tell you what I'll do. If I'll take a look into them and I'll try and make a note of what was I going to say? If I can find something similar that's old enough. I think both of those are reasonably gothic in their origins. If I do any gothic stuff, I'll let you know about that. I can probably do Poe, but I don't think I've got any in a minute. I've done a bit of Stevenson, but yeah. I appreciate the thought anyway. And if you do come across anything older than 57 that you'd like read, I'm happy to try and get my hands on it. Yeah. What was it? Oh yeah. Oh, Edward, the money is. Ooh. Appreciate it. Oh, Edward, the money is ours, and I'm so grateful. Oh, so grateful. Kiss me, dear. It's forever since we kissed. And we needed it so, the money, and now you're free of Pinkerton and his bank, and nobody's slave anymore. Seems to me I could fly for joy. It was an happy half hour the couple spent there on the settee, caressing each other. But the old days come again, days that had began with their courtship and lasted without a break till the stranger brought the deadly money. By and by the wife said, "Oh, Edward, how lucky it was that you did him that grand service, poor Godson." I never liked him, but I love him now. It was fine and beautiful of you never to mention it or brag about it. Then with a touch of reproach, but you would have told me, Edward. You would have told your wife, you know. Well, well, Mary, you see. Now stop hemming and hawing and tell me about it, Edward. I always loved you and now I'm proud of you. Everybody believes there was only one good, generous soul in the village, and now it turns out that you, Edward. Edward, why didn't you tell me? Well, Mary, I can't. You can't? Why can't you tell me? You see, he made me promise I wouldn't. The wife looked him over and said very slowly, Made you promise? Edward, what do you tell me that for? Mary, do you think I would lie? She was troubled and silent for a moment, then she laid her hand with his and said, No, we've wandered far enough from our bearings. God spare us that. And all your life you have never uttered a lie. But now the foundations of things seem to be crumbling from under us. She lost her voice for a moment and said brokenly, Lead us not into temptation. I think you made the promise, Edward. Let it rest. Let us keep away from that ground now. That has all gone by. Let us be happy again. It is no time for clouds. Edward found it something of an effort to comply, for his mind kept wandering, trying to remember what the service was that he had done Godson. The couple lay awake most of the night. Mary happy and busy, Edward busy but not happy. Mary was planning to do what she would with the money. Edward was trying to recall the service. At first his conscience was sore on account of the lie he had told Mary, if it were a lie. After much reflection, suppose it was a lie. What then? Was it such a great matter? Aren't we always acting lies? And why not tell them? Look at Mary, look what she's done. Well, he was hurrying off on his honest errand, what was she doing? Lamenting because the papers hadn't been destroyed and the money kept. Is theft better than lying? That point lost its sting. The lie dropped in the background and left comfort behind it. The next point come from the front. Hadley rendered that service. Well, it was Godson's own evidence, as reported in Stevenson's letter. There could be no better evidence than that, or even proof that he had rendered it. Of course, that point was settled. No, not quite. He recalled with a wince that the unknown Mr. Stevenson was just a trifle unsure as to whether the performer of it was Richards or some other. And oh dear, he had put Richards on his honour. He must himself decide whether the money must go. And Mr. Stevenson was not doubting that if he were the wrong man, he would go honourably and find the right one. Oh, it was odious to put a man in such a situation. Oh, why couldn't Stevenson have left out that doubt? What did he want to intrude that for? Further reflection. How had it happened that Richards remained in Stevenson's mind as indicating the right man, and not some other man's name? That looked good. Yeah, it looked very good. In fact, it went on looking better and better, straight along, until by and by it went into positive proof. And then Richardson put the matter at once out of his mind, for he had a private instinct that a proof once established is better left so. He was feeling reasonably comfortable now, but there was still one other detail that kept pushing itself onto his notice. Of course, he had done that service, that was settled. But what was the service? He must recall it. He would not go to sleep till he had recalled it. It would make his peace of mind perfect. And so he thought and thought. He thought of a dozen things, possible services, but not one of them seemed adequate. None of them seemed large enough. None of them seemed worth the money, worth the fortune Godson wished he could leave him in his will. And besides, he couldn't remember having done them anyway. Now then, what kind of a service would it be that would make a man so inordinately grateful? Ah, the saving of his soul. That must be it. Yes, he could remember now. How he once set himself the task of converting Goodson and laboured at it as much as if he was going to say 3 months. But upon closer examination, it struck him a month, into a week, into a day, into nothing. Yes, he remembered now, with unwell vividness, that Godson had told him to go to the thunder and mind his own business. He wasn't hankering to follow Hadleyburg to heaven. So that solution were a failure. He hadn't saved Goodson's soul. Richardson was discouraged. Then after a little come another idea. Had he saved Goodson's property? No, that wouldn't do it. He hadn't any. His life? That's it, of course. Well, he must have thought of it before. This time we were on the right track, sure. His imagination mill were at work within a minute now. Thereafter, doing a stretch of 2 exhausting hours, he was busy saving Goodson's life. He saved it in all kinds of difficult and perilous ways. In every case, he got it saved satisfactorily up to a certain point, and just as he would begin to get well persuaded that it had really happened, the troublesome detail would turn up which made the whole thing impossible. As in the matter of drowning, for instance. In that case, he had swum out and tugged Goodson ashore in an unconscious state, with great Coward looking on and applauding. When he got it all out and would just begin to remember all about it, a whole swarm of disqualifying details arrived on the ground. The town would have known of the circumstance, Mary would have known of it, it would glare like a limelight in his own memory instead of being an inconspicuous service which he had possibly rendered. without knowing its full value. At that point, he remembered that he couldn't swim anyway. Now, there was a point which he had been overlooking from the start. That would be a service which he had rendered, possibly without knowing the full value of it. Why, really, that would have been an easy hunt, much easier than the others. And sure enough, and by he found it. Goodson, years and years ago, came near marrying a very sweet and pretty girl named Nancy Hewitt, but in some way or other the match had been broken off. The girl died. Goodson had remained a bachelor, and by become a soured one and frank despiser of the human species. Soon after the girl's death, the village found out, or thought it had found out, that she carried a spoonful of Negro blood in her veins. Richard worked at these details a good while, and in the end he thought he remembered things concerning them which must have gotten mislaid in his memory through long neglect. He seemed to dimly remember that it was he that found out about the Negro blood, and that it was he that had told the village. And the village told Goodson where they got it, that he thus saved Goodson from his marrying the tainted girl. They had done it in this great service without knowing the full value of it, in fact without knowing he was doing it, but that Goodson knew the value of it and what a narrow escape he had, and so went to his grave grateful to be his benefactor and wishing he had a fortune to leave him. It were all clear and simple now. The more he went over it, the more luminous and certain it grew, and at last, when nestled asleep satisfied and happy, he remembered the old thing just as if it had been yesterday. In fact, he dimly remembered Goodson telling him his gratitude once. Meantime, Mary had spent $6,000 on a new house for herself and a pair of slippers for her pastor, and then had fallen peacefully the rest. Just going to pause here to say, oh look, all these very good and upstanding people are quite racist as well. Well, I guess we know whose side we're on now. The same Saturday evening, the postman had delivered a letter to each of the other principal citizens, 19 letters in all. No two of the envelopes were alike, and no two of the superscriptions were in the same hand, but the letters inside were just like each other in every detail but one. They were exact copies of the letter received by Richardson, handwriting and all, and were signed by Stevenson, but in place of Richardson's name, each receiver's own name appeared. All night long, 18 principal citizens did what their ecstatic brother Richard was doing at the same time. They put their energy trying to remember what notable service it was they had unconsciously done Barclay Goodson. In no case was it an holiday job, still they succeeded. And while they were at this work, which was difficult, their wives put the night in spending the money, which was easy. During that one night, the 19 wives spent an average of $7,000 each out of the $40,000 in the sack, 133 altogether. Next day there was a surprise for Jack Halliday. He noticed that the faces of the 19 chief citizens and their wives bore the expression of peaceful and holy happiness again. He could not understand it, neither was he able to invent any remarks about it that could damage or disturb it. And so it was his turn to be dissatisfied with life. His private guesses at the reason for the happiness failed in all instances upon examination. When he met Miss Wilcox and noticed the placid ecstasy in her face, he said to himself, "Our cat has had kittens," and went and asked the cook if it was not so. The cook had detected the happiness but did not know the cause. When Halliday found the duplicate ecstasy in the face of Shadbelly Bilson, village nickname, he was sure some neighbour of Bilson's had broken his leg, but inquiry showed that this had not happened. The subdued ecstasy in Gregory Yates' face could mean but one thing: he was a mother-in-law short. It were another mistake, and Pinkerton he has collected 10 cents he thought we were going to lose, and so on and so on. In some cases the guests had to remain in doubt, in others they proved distinct errors. In the end, Halliday said to himself, "Anyway, it foots up there's 19 Hadleyburg families temporary in heaven. I don't know how it happened, I only know Providence is off duty today." An architect and builder from the next state had lately ventured to set up a small business in some promising village, and yet his sign had not been hanging out a week. Not a customer yet. He was a discouraged man, and sorry he had come. But it's worth a change suddenly now. First one, then another of the chief citizens' wives said to him privately, "Come to my house Monday week, but say nothing about it for the present. We think of building." He got 11 invitations that day. That night he wrote his daughter and broke off her match with her student. He said she could marry a mile higher than that. Pinkerton the banker and 2 or 3 other well-to-do men planned counting seats, but waited. That kind don't count their chickens until they are hatched. The Wilsons devised a grand new thing, a fancy dress ball. They made no actual promises, but told their acquaintanceship in confidence they were thinking of the matter over, and thought they should give it, and if we do, you'll be invited, of course. People were surprised and said to one another, "Are these crazy, the poor Wilsons? They can't afford it." Several among the 19 said privately to their husbands, "It's a good idea. We'll keep still till their cheap thing is over, and then we will give one that will make it sick." The days drifted along, and the bill of furniture, the future squandering, rose higher and higher, wider and wider, more and more foolish and reckless. It began to look as if every member of the 19 would not only spend his whole $40,000 before receiving it, but be actually in debt by the time he got the money. In some cases, light-headed people did not stop with planning to spend; they really spent on credit. They bought land, mortgages, farms, speculative stocks, fine clothes, horses, and various other things, paid down the bonus, and made themselves liable for the rest at 10 days. Presently the sober second thought came, and Halliday noticed that a ghastly anxiety was beginning to show up in a good many faces. Again he was puzzled and didn't know what to make of it. The woodcock's kittens aren't dead, but they weren't born. Nobody's broken a leg, there's no shrinkage in mothers-in-laws. Nothing has happened. It's an unsolvable mystery. There are another puzzled man too, the Reverend Mr. Burgess. For days, whenever he went, people seemed to follow him or to be watching out for him. Excuse me, we're right near the end, so I'll finish first and then kill the bot. Right? And if he ever found himself a retired spot, members of the 19 would be sure to appear, thrust an envelope privately into his hand, whisper, "To be opened at the town hall Friday evening," and then vanish away like a guilty thing. You're expecting there might be one claimant for the sack, doubtful however. Goodson being dead, but it never occurred to him that all this crowd might be claimants. When the great Friday come at last, he found that he had 19 envelopes. And now we quickly murder a bot. There we go. Hate those guys. And can I delete the comments? Ooh, no. I don't know how to do that, unfortunately. Well, that's that. Yeah, so we're at the end of part 2 there, and the plot has plotted. I don't really think there's a lot to say so far about this. Like, obviously there's a great overarching message, but I'll cover that at the end. I do like how quickly they've started spending the money though. That is a very fun detail. Mark Twain's good at doing things like that, where he just gives you a little bit of, how do you put it, like minor insight that adds a lot of depth to a scene or to an ongoing event. I do appreciate it. Yeah, I'll have my little drink of water and then we'll get into part 3, I think. Right then. Part the 3rd. The town hall had never looked finer. The platform at the end of it were backed by a showy draping of flags. At intervals along the walls were festoons of flags. The gallery fronts were clothed in flags, the supporting columns were swathed in flags. All this would have impressed the stranger, for he would be there in considerable force, and in a large degree he would be connected with the press. The house were full. The 412 fixed seats were occupied. Also the 68 extra chairs which had been packed in the aisles. The steps of the platform were occupied. Some distinguished strangers were given seats on the platform. The horseshoe of tables which fenced in the front and sides of the platform set a strong force of special correspondents who had come from everywhere. It was the best dressed house the town had ever produced. There were some tolerably expensive toilets there, and in several cases the ladies who wore them had the look of being unfamiliar with that kind of clothes. Toilets? Yeah, that word is... There were some tolerably expensive toilets. I don't know exactly what is meant by that. I'm guessing in the sense of like eau de toilette. Maybe it's a contemporary term for like fancy dress, not sure. But in several cases the ladies who wore them had the look of being unfamiliar with that kind of clothes. At least the town thought they had the look. The notion could have arisen from the town's knowledge of the fact that these ladies had never inhabited such clothes before. The gold sack stood on a little table at the front platform where all the house could see it. The bulk of the house gazed at it with a burning interest, a mouth-watering interest, a wistful and pathetic interest. A minority of 19 couples gazed at it tenderly, lovingly, proprietarily, and the male half of this minority kept saying over to themselves the moving little impromptu speeches of thankfulness for the audience's applause and congratulations which they presently were going to get up and deliver. Every now and then one of these got a piece of paper out of his vest pocket and privately glanced at it to refresh his memory. Of course there was a buzz of conversation going on, there always is. But at last, when the Reverend Mr. Burgess rose and laid his hand on the sack, you could hear his microbe snore. The place was so still. He related the curious history of the stack, and then went on to speak in warm terms of Hadleyburg's old and well-earned reputation for spotless honesty, and the town's just pride in this reputation. He said that this reputation were a treasure of priceless value, but under Providence its value had now become inestimably enhanced. The recent episode had spread this fame far and wide, and thus had focused the eyes of the American world upon this village and made its name for all time, as he hoped and believed, a synonym for commercial incorruptibility. Bracket applause. And who is to be the guardian of this noble treasure? The community as a whole? No. The responsibility is individual, not communal. From this day forth, each and every one of you is in his own person its special guardian, and individually responsible that no harm shall come to it. Does each of you accept this great trust? Tumultuous assent. Then all is well. Transmit it to your children and to your children's children. Today your purity is beyond reproach. See to it that it shall remain so. Today there is not a person in your community who could be beguiled to touch a penny not his own. See to it that you abide in this grace. We will, we will. This is not the place to make comparisons between ourselves and other communities. Some of them ungracious towards us. They have their ways, we have ours. Let us be content. Applause. I am done. Under my hands, my friends, rests a stranger's eloquent recognition of what we are. Through him the world will always henceforth know what we are. We do not know who he is, but in your name I utter your gratitude and ask you to raise your voices in endorsement. The house rose in a body and made the walls quake with the thunder of its thankfulness for the space of a long minute. Then it sat down, and Mr. Burgess took an envelope out of his pocket. The house held its breath while he slit the envelope open, took from it a slip of paper. He read its contents slowly and impressively. The audience, listening with tranced attention to this magic document, each of whose words stood for an ingot of gold. The remarks which I made to the distressed stranger was this: "You are very far from being a bad man. Go home and reform." Then he continued, "We shall know in a moment now whether the remark he quoted corresponds with the one concealed in the sack, and if that shall prove to be so, and undoubtedly will, this sack of gold belongs to a fellow citizen who will henceforth stand before the nation as the symbol of the special virtue which has made our town famous throughout the land. Mr. Bilson." The house has got himself all ready to burst into the proper tornado of applause, but instead of doing it, he seemed stricken with a paralysis. There was a deep hush for a moment or two, and a wave of whispered murmurs swept the place. About this tenor: "Bilson, oh come on, this is too thin. $20 to a stranger or anybody. Bilson, tell it the Marines." At this point the house caught its breath all of a sudden in new accents of astonishment, for it discovered that whereas in one part of the hall Deacon Bilson was standing up with his head meekly bowed, in another part of it Lawyer Wilson were doing the same. There were wonder and silence now for a while. Everybody were puzzled, and 19 couples were surprised and indignant. Bilson and Wilson turned and stared at each other. Bilson asked bitingly, "Why do you rise, Mr. Wilson?" "Because I have a right to." "Perhaps you will be good enough to explain to the House why you rise." "With great pleasure, because I wrote that paper." "It's an instant falsity. I wrote it myself." It was Burgess's turn to be paralysed. He stood looking vacantly at first one of the men and then the other, and did not seem to know what to do. The House was stupefied. Lawyer Wilson spoke up now and said, "I asked the chair to read the name signed to that paper." That brought the chair to itself, and it read out the name: "John Waterton Bilson." "There," shouted Bilson. "What have you got to say for yourself now? And what kind of apology are you going to make to me in this insulated house for the imposture which you have attempted to play here?" "No apologies are due, sir. As for the rest of it, I publicly charge you with pilfering my note from Mr. Burgess and substituting a copy of it signed with your own name. There is no other way by which you could have gotten hold of the test remark. I alone of living men possess the secret of its wording." There will likely be a scandalous state of things if this went on. Everybody noticed with distress that the short-hand scribes were scribbling like mad. Many people were crying, "Chair, chair, order, order." Burgess rapped with his gavel and said, "Let us not forget the proprieties due. There has obviously been a great mistake somewhere, but surely that is all. If Mr. Wilson gave me an envelope, and I remember now that he did, I still have it." He took one out of his pocket, opened it, glanced at it, looked surprised and worried, stood silent a few moments. Then he waved his hand in a wandering and mechanical way, and made an effort or two to say something and gave it up despondently. Several voices cried out, read it, what is it?" So he began in a dazed and sleepwalker fashion. "The remark which I made to the unhappy stranger was this: You are far from being a bad man." The House gazed at him, marvelling. "Go and reform," murmurs. "Amazing, what can this mean?" "This one," said the chair, "is signed Thurlow G. Wilson." "There," cried Wilson. "I reckon that settles it. I knew perfectly well my note was purloined." "Purloined," replied Bilson. "I'll let you know that neither you nor any man in your kidney must venture to—" The chair. "Order, gentlemen, order. Take your seats, both of you, please." They obeyed, shaking their heads and grumbling angrily. The House were profoundly puzzled. They did not know what to do with this curious emergency. Presently Thompson got up. Thompson was the actor. He would well like to be a 19er, but such were not for him. His stock of acts were not considerable enough for the position. He said, "Mr. Chairman, if I may be permitted to make a suggestion, can both of these gentlemen be right? I put it to you, sir, can both have happened to say the very same words to the stranger? It seems to me—" The tanner got up and interrupted him. The tanner was a disgruntled man. He believed himself entitled to be a 19er, but he couldn't get recognition. It made him a little unpleasant in his ways and speech. Said he, "Sure, that's not the point. That could happen twice in 100 years. But not the other thing. Neither of them gave the $20. A ripple of applause. Both men said I did, and then each accused one another of pilfering. Order! Sit down, if you please, both of you. Neither of the notes has been out of my possession at any moment. Good, that settles that. Tanner responded. Mr. Chairman, one thing is now plain. One of these men has been eavesdropping on the other one's bed and filching family secrets. If it is not unparliamentary to suggest it, I will remark that both are equal to it. Order, order. I will draw the remark, sir, and will confine myself to suggesting that if one of them was overheard the other's reveal the test remark to his wife, which will catch him now. A voice called out, How? Easily. The two have not quoted the remark in exactly the same words. You would have noticed that, if there hadn't been a considerable stretch of time and exciting quarrel inserted between the two readings. Another voice called out, Name the difference. Tanner. The word very is in Bilson's note and not in the other. And so, he's right. And so, if the chair will examine the test remark of the sack, we shall know which of these two frauds, order, which the two adventurers, order, which of these two gentlemen is entitled to wear the belt as being the first dishonest blatherskate ever bred in this town, which he is dishonoured, and which will be a salutary place for him from now on out. Vigorous applause followed, and people called for him to for the sack to be opened. Mr. Burgess made a slit in the sack, slid his hand in, and brought out an envelope. In it were a couple of folded notes. He said, One of these is marked not to be examined until all written communication which has been addressed to the chair, if any, shall have been read. The other is marked to the test. Allow me, it is worded to wit. I do not require the first half of the remark which were made to me by my benefactor should be quoted with exactness, for it were not striking and could be forgotten. But its closing 15 words are quite striking and I think easily rememberable. Unless these should be accurately reproduced, let the applicant be regarded as an impostor. My benefactor began by saying he seldom gave advice to anyone, but that it always bore the hallmark of high value when he did give it. Then he said this, and it has never failed from my memory. You are far from being a bad man. 50 voices, that settles it, the money's Wilson's. Wilson, speech. People jumped up and crowded around Wilson, waving in his hand and congratulating fervently. Meantime the chair was hammering with the gavel and shouting, Order, gentlemen, order! Let me finish reading the piece. When quiet was restored, the reading resumed as follows. Go and reform, or mark my words, some day for your sins you will die and go to hell or Hadleyburg. Try and make it the former. A ghastly silence followed. First an angry cloud began to settle darkly upon the face of the citizenship. After a pause the cloud began to rise, and a tickled expression tried to take its place. Tried so hard that they were only kept under with great and painful difficulty. The reporters, the Brixtonite and other strangers bent their heads down and shielded their faces with their hands, and managed to hold in by main strength and heroic courtesy. At this most inopportune time burst upon the stillness the roar of a solitary voice, Jack Halliday's. That's got the hallmark on it. Then the house let go. Strangers and all, even Mr. Burgess's gravity broke down presently. Then the audience considered itself officially absolved from all restraint, and made the most of its privilege. It were a good long laugh, and tempestuously whole-hearted one. But it ceased at last, long enough for Mr. Burgess to try and resume, and for the people to get their eyes partially wiped, and then it broke out again, and afterwards yet again. And at last Burgess were able to get out these serious words. It is useless to try and disguise the fact. We find ourselves in the presence of a matter of grave import. It involves the honour of your town. It strikes at the town's good name. The difference of a single word between the test remarks offered by Mr. Wilson and Mr. Bilson was itself a serious thing, since it indicated one or the other of these gentlemen had committed a theft. The two men were sitting limp, nerveless, crushed. By these words, both were electrified in the movement and started to get up. Sit down, the chair said sharply, and they obeyed. That, as I have said, was a serious thing, and it was, but for only one of them. The matter has become graver, for the honour of both is now in formidable peril. Shall I go even further and say inextricable peril? Both left out the crucial 15 words. He paused. During several moments he allowed the pervading stillness to gather and deepen its impressive effects, then added, There would seem to be but one way whereby this could happen. They asked the gentleman, was there collusion? Agreement? A low murmur sifted throughout the house. Its import was, he's got them both. Wilson were not used to emergencies. He sat in an helpless collapse. But Wilson were a lawyer. He struggled to his feet, pale and worried, and said, I ask the indulgence of the House while I explain this most painful matter. I am sorry to say what I am about to say, since it must inflict irreparable injury upon Mr. Bilson, whom I have always esteemed and respected until now, and whose invulnerability to temptation I entirely believe, as did you all. But for the preservation of my own honour I must speak, and with frankness. I confess with shame, and I now beseech your pardon for it, that I said to the ruined stranger all of the words contained within the test remark, including the disparaging 15. Sensation erupted. When the late publication was made, I recalled them, and I resolved to claim the sack of coin, for by every right I was entitled to it. I will ask you to consider this point and weigh it well. The stranger's gratitude to me was that night knew no bounds. He said himself that he could find no words that were adequate, and that if he should ever be able to, he would repay me 1,000-fold. Now then I ask you, could I expect, could I believe, could I even remotely imagine, feeling as he did, he would do so ungrateful a thing as to add these unnecessary 15 words to his test? Is that a trap for me? Expose me as a slanderer of my own hometown before my people assembled in a public hall. It was preposterous, it was impossible. His test would contain only the kindly opening clause of my remark, but of that I had no shadow of a doubt. You would have thought, as I did, you would not have expected a base betrayal from one whom you befriended and against whom you had committed no offence. And so with perfect confidence, perfect trust, I wrote on a piece of paper the opening words, ending with, "Go and reform," and signed it. When I was about to put it in an envelope, I was called into my back office, and without thinking, I left the paper lying open on my desk. He stopped, turned his head slowly towards Bilson, waited a moment, and added, "I asked you to note this. When I returned a little later, Mr. Bilson was retiring by my street door." Sensation erupted once more. In a moment, Bilson were on his feet and shouted, "It's a lie! It's an infamous lie! Be seated, sir. Mr. Wilson has the floor." Bilson's friends pulled him into his seat and quieted him, and Wilson went on. "These are the simple facts. My note was now lying in a different place on the table from where I had left it. I noticed that, but attached no importance to it, thinking a draft had blown it there. That Mr. Bilson would read a private paper was a thing which could not occur to me. He was an honourable man, and he would be above that. If you will allow me to say it, I think his extra word, 'very,' stands explained. It is attributed to a defect of memory. I was the only man in the world who could furnish here any details of the test remark, by honourable means. I have finished. There is nothing in the world like a persuasive speech to fuddle the mental apparatuses and upset the convictions and debauch the emotions of an audience not practised in the tricks and delusions of oratory." Wilson sat down victorious. The house submerged him in tides of approving applause. Friends swarmed to him, shook him by the hand, and congratulated him. And Bilson was shouted down and not allowed to say a word. The chair hammered and hammered with his gavel, and kept shouting, "Let us proceed, gentlemen, let us proceed." At last there were a measurable degree of quiet, and the actor said, "But why is there to proceed with, sir, but to deliver the money?" That's it. Come forward, Wilson," the house cried. "I move 3 cheers for Mr. Wilson, symbol of the special virtue which is..." The cheers burst forth before he could finish, and in the midst of them, and in the midst of the clamour and gavel too, some enthusiast mounted Wilson on a big friend's shoulders and would go and fetch him in triumph from the platform. The chair's voice now rose above the noise. "Order to your places. You forget that there is still a document to read." When quiet had been restored, he took up the document and was going to read it, but laid it down again, saying, "I forgot, this is not to be read until all written communications received by me have first been read." He took an envelope out of his pocket, removed its enclosure, glanced at it, seemed astonished, held it out and gazed at it and stared at it. 20 voices cried out, "What is it? Read it! Read it!" And he did, slowly and wonderingly. "The remarks which I made to the stranger," and I asked was this. "Well, far from being a bad man," the crowd cried, "Great Scott! Go and reform. I saw my legs off. Signed Mr. Pankerton the banker." The pandemonium of delight, which turned itself loose now, was of a sort to make the judicious weep. Those whose withers were unwrung laughed till the tears ran down. Reporters in throes of laughter set down disordered post-ports which would never in the world be decipherable, and a sleeping dog jumped up, scared out of his wits, and barked himself crazy at the turmoil. All manner of cries were scattered through the din. "We're getting rich," 2 symbols of incorruptibility. Without counting Bilson, 3. Count Shadowby and we can have too many. Whereat Bilson's elected. Alas, poor Wilson, victim of 2 thieves. A powerful voice called out, "Silence! The chair has fished something more out of its pocket. Hurrah, something fresh, read it, read it." "The remark which I made, etc. You are far from being a bad man, go, etc. Signed Gregory Yates." 4 symbols! Hey for Yates, fish again. The house were roaring humour now, and we're ready to get the fun out of the occasion that might be in it. Several 19ers, looking pale, distressed, got up and began to work their way towards the aisle, but a score of shouts went up. The doors, close the doors. No interruptible shall leave this place. Sit down, everybody." The mandator obeyed. "Fish again, read, read." The chair fished again. Once more the familiar words began to fall from his lips. "You are far from being a bad man. Name, what's his name? L. Inglesby Sargent. Father elected, pile up the symbols, go on. Far from being a bad name. Nicholas Whitworth. Hooray, it's a symbol day." Somebody wailed in and began to sing the rhyme, leaving out its. The lovely Mikado in tune of "When a Man's Afraid of a Beautiful Maid." The audience joined in with joy, then, just in time, somebody contributed another line. I'm going to take a moment here to pause and say that I'm not familiar with this tune, which I see more relevant at the time. "And don't you this forget, corruptibles far from Hadleyburg are, but the symbols here you bet. The house roared the entire verse. As it was sung with booming enthusiasm, the happy house started in at the beginning and sang the 4 lines through twice with immense swing and dash, and finished up with a crashing 3x3 and a tiger for Hadleyburg the Incorruptible and all the symbols of it, which we shall find serving to receive the All-Mark tonight. Then the shouts at the chair began all over again. Go on, read some more, read all you got. That's it, go on, we're waiting eternal celebrity. A dozen men got up now and began to protest. They said this farce was the work of some abandoned joker and was an insult to the whole community. I doubt these signatures are all forgeries. The crowd responded, sit down, shut up, you're confessing, we'll find your names in the lot. Mr. Chairman, how many are the envelopes that you got? The chair counted. Together with those that have already been examined, there are 19. A storm of derisive applause broke out. Perhaps they all contain the secret. I move that you open them all and read aloud every signature that is attached to a note of that sort, and read also the first 8 words of the note. Second the motion. They were put up and carried uproariously. Then poor old Richards got up, and his wife rose and stood at his side. Her head was bent down so that none might see that she was crying. Her husband gave her his arm, and so supporting her, he began to squeak in a quavering voice. My friends, you have known us too, Mary and me, all our lives, and I think you've liked us and respected us. The chair interrupted him. Allow me, it is quite true, and what you were saying, Mr. Richard. This town does know you too. It does like you, it does respect you, or it honours and loves you. Halliday's voice ran out. That's the all-marked truth too. The chair's right. The house speak up and say it. Rise now then, hip, all together. The house rose in mass, faced towards the old couple, eagerly filled the air with a snowstorm of waving handkerchiefs, and delivered their cheers with all its affectionate heart. The chair then continued. What I was going to say is this. We know your good heart, Mr. Richards, but this is not a time for the exercise of charity towards offenders. I see your generous purpose in your face, but I cannot allow you to plead for these men. But I was going to... Please take your seat, Mr. Richards. We must examine the rest of these notes. Simple fairness to the men who have already been posed requires this. As soon as that has been done, I give you my word for this. You shall be heard. Many voices. Right, the chair is right. No interruption can be permitted at this stage. Go on, names. All according to the terms of the motion. The old couple sat reluctantly down. The husband whispered to the wife. It is pitifully hard to wait. The shame will be greater than ever when they find that we were only going to plead for ourselves. Straight away the jollity broke loose again with the reading of the names. You are far from being a bad name, signature Robert J. Titmarsh. You are far from being a bad man, signature Elephant Weeks. You are far from being a bad man, signature Oscar B. Wilder. At this point the house lit upon the idea of taking the 8 words out of the chairman's hands. You were not unthankful for that. Henceforth he held up each note in its turn and waited. The house drowned out the 8 words in a massed and measured a musical deep volume of sound, with a daringly close resemblance to a well-known chant. You are far from being a bad man. And the chair said, signature Archibald Wilcox, and so on, name after name. Everybody an increasingly and gloriously good time except the wretched 19. Now and then, when a particularly shining name were called, the house made the chair wait while it chanted the whole of the test remark from the beginning to the closing word. And go to hell or Hadleyburg and try to make it the former. And in these special cases, they added a grand and agonised imposing Amen. The list dwindled. Poor old Richardson, keeping a tally of the count, wincing where a name resembling his own were pronounced, and waiting in miserable suspense for the time to come when it would be his humiliating privilege to rise with Mary and finish his plea, which was intended to word thus. For until now we have never done anything wrong, but have gone our humble way unreproached. We are very poor, we are old, and we have no chick nor child to help us. We were sorely tempted and we fell. It was my purpose when I got up before you to make confession and beg that my name might not be read out in this public place. For it seemed to us that we could not bear it, but I was prevented. It was just, it was our place to suffer with the rest. It has been hard for us. It is the first time we have ever heard our name fall from anyone's lips, sullied. Be merciful for the sake of your charity, for the sake of the better days. Make our shame as light to bear as in your charity you can. At this point in his reverie, Mary nudged him, perceiving that his mind were absent. The house chanting, you are far, etc. Be ready, Mary whispered. Your name comes now, you read 18. The chant ended. Next, came volume from all over the house. Burgess put his hand in his pocket. The old couple, trembling, began to rise. Burgess fumbled a moment and then said, I find I have read them all. Faint with joy and surprise, the couple sank into their seats, and Mary whispered, Oh, bless God, we are saved. He has lost ours. I wouldn't give this for 100 of those sacks. He asked but outside with its Mikado travesty and sang it 3 times with ever-increasing enthusiasm, rising to his feet when it reached for the 3rd time the chanting line, "But the symbols are here, you bet," and finishing up with cheers and a tiger for Hadleyburg purity and our 18 immortal representatives of it. Then Wingate, the Souder, got up and proposed cheers for the cleanest man in town, the one solitary important citizen in it who didn't try to steal the money, Edward Richards. They were given great and moving heartiness, and somebody proposed that Richard be elected sole guardian and symbol of the now sacred Hadleyburg tradition, with power and right to stand up and look the old sarcastic world in the face. Passed with acclamation, they then sang the Mikado again and ended it with, "And there's one symbol left, you bet." There was a pause, then a voice. "Now then, who's to get the sack?" "That's easy. The money is to be divided among the 18 incorruptibles." So they gave the suffering stranger $20 apiece, and the remark, each in his turn. It took 20 minutes for the procession to move past. Stacked the stranger. Total contribution $360, although under the loan back, and the interest $40,000 altogether. Many voices derisively called for it to be divvied out. Be kind to the poor and not keep them waiting. Order! I now offer the stranger's remaining document. It says, "If no claimant shall appear," grand chorus of groans, "I desire that you open the sack and count out the money to the principal citizen of your town. They to take it in trust," cries of "oh," and use it in such ways as to them shall seem best for the propagation and preservation of your community's noble reputation for incorruptible honesty. A reputation to which their names and their efforts will add new and far-reaching lustre. That seems to be all. No, here is a postscript. P.S. Citizens of Hadleyburg. There is no pest remark. Nobody made one. Following this, there was great sensation in the room. There wasn't any pauper stranger, nor any $20 contribution, nor any accompanying benediction and compliment. These are all inventions. The room buzzed with general astonishment and delight. Allow me to tell my story. It will take but a word or two. I passed through your town at a certain time and received a deep offence which I had not earned. Any other man would have been content to kill 1 or 2 of you and call it square. But to me that would have been a trivial revenge and inadequate, for the dead do not suffer. Besides, I could not kill you all, and anyway, made as I am, even that would not have satisfied me. I want to damage every man in the place and every woman, and not in their bodies or in their estate, but in their vanity, that place where the feeble and foolish people are most vulnerable. So I disguised myself and come back and studied you. You were easy game, you had an old and lofty reputation for honesty, and naturally you were proud of it. It was your treasure of treasures, the very apple of your eye. As soon as I found out that you carefully and vigilantly kept yourselves and your children out of temptation, I knew how to proceed. Why, you simple creatures, the weakest of all weak things, is a virtue which has not been tested in the fire. I laid a plan, and gathered a list of names. My project was to corrupt Hadleyburg, the incorruptible. My ideal to make liars and thieves of nearly 100 smirchless men and women who had never in their lives uttered a lie or stolen a penny. I was afraid of Goodson, he was neither born nor reared in Hadleyburg. I was afraid that if I started to operate my schemes by getting my letter laid before you, you'd say to yourselves, "Goodson is the only man among you who'd give away $20 to a poor devil, and then you might not bite at my bait." But heaven took Goodson, and then I knew I was safe, and I set my trap and baited it. It may be that I shall not catch all the men to whom I mailed the pretended their secret, but I shall catch the most of them if I know Hadleyburg nature. The voices of the room cried, "Right, you got every last one of them. I believe they will even steal ostensible gamble money rather than miss poor, tempted and mistrained fellows. I am open to eternally and everlastingly squelch your vanity and give Hadleyburg a new renown, one that will stick and spread far. If I have succeeded, open the sack and summon the Committee on Propagation and Preservation of the Hadleyburg Reputation." A cyclone of voices. "Open it, the 18 to the front." I've thought about it, but yeah. I do love to do a little bit of burr in the voice. God. And it's nice when you get you decide to do a character like that and you get plenty of time for it. But yeah. Thanks. Our cyclone of voices called "Open it, the 18 to the front. Committee on Propagation of the Tradition forward, the Incorruptibles." The chair ripped the sack wide and gathered up an handful of bright, broad yellow coins, shook them together, then examined them. "Friends, they are only gilded discs of lead." There were a crash and outbreak of delight over this news, and when the noise had subsided, the tanner called out, "By right of apparent seniority in this business, Mr. Wilson is chairman of the Committee on Propagation of the Tradition. I suggest that he steps forward on behalf of his pals and receive in trust the money." 100 voices called out, "Wilson, Wilson, Wilson, speech, Wilson." In a voice trembling with anger, Wilson replied, "You will allow me to say, and without apologies for my language, damn the money." "I want him a Baptist," a voice cried. Another voice cried out, 17 symbols left? Step up, gentlemen, and assume your trust. There were a pause, no response. The saddler cried out, Mr. Chairman, we've got one clean man left anyway out of the late aristocracy, and he needs money and deserves it. I move that you point Jack Halliday to get up there and auction off that sack of gilt $20 pieces and give the result to the right man, the man who Hadleyburg delights to honour, Edward Richards. This will receive a great enthusiasm. The dog taken hand again. The saddler started the bids at $1. The Brixton folk and Barnum's representative fought hard for it. The people cheered every jump that the bids made. The excitement climbed moment by moment, higher and higher. The bidders got their mettle and grew steadily more and more daring, more and more determined. The jumps went from $1 up to 5, then to 10, 20, 50, 100, and then, at the beginning of the auction, Richard whispered in distress to his wife, "Oh, Mary, can we allow it? You see, it's an honour award, a testimony of the purity of character, and can we allow it? And I'd better get up and, oh, Mary, what ought we to do? What do you think?" In the background, Halliday's voice cried, 15 unbid, 15 for the sack, 20 thanks, 30, thanks again, 30, 35, do I hear 40? 40 it is. Keep the ball rolling, gentlemen, hear it rolling. 50, thank the noble Roman, going up 50, 50, 50, 70, 70, 90, splendid, 100, pile up, 120, 40 just in time, 150, 200, superb, do I hear 200? Oh, thanks, 250. There's another temptation, Edward, and I'm all tremble, but we've escaped one temptation, that ought to warn us to. 6, do I hear? Thanks, 6, 50, 700. And yet, Edward, when you think nobody's $800, all right, make it 9. Mr. Pearson, did I hear you say thank you? 9. The noble sack of virgin there going only $900, going all and come. Do I hear 1,000? Gratefully yours. Did one say 11? The sack which is going to be the most celebrated in the whole Union. Oh, Edward, beginning the song. We are so poor, but do as you think best. Do as you think best. Edward fell. As he sat still, sat with a conscience which were not satisfied, but which were overpowered by circumstance. Me and I'm a stranger who looked like an amateur detective, gotten up as an impossible English earl. I've been watching the evening's proceedings with a manifest interest, with a contented expression in his face. He had been privately commenting to himself. He was now soliloquising somewhat like this. Now the 18 are bidding. That's not satisfactory. I must change that. The dramatic unities require it. They must buy the sack they tried to steal. They must pay an hefty price too. Some of them are rich. And another thing, when I make a mistake in Hadleyburg, nature puts the man... And when I make a mistake in Hadleyburg, nature puts the man that puts the error upon me is entitled to an eye on her, and some man must pay it. His poor old Richard has brought my judgment to shame. He is an honest man. I don't understand it, but I acknowledge it. Yes, he saw my deuce's hand with a straight flush, and by rights the pot is his. And it shall be a jackpot too, if I can manage it. He disappointed me, but let that pass. You were watching the bidding. 1,000 the market broke. The prices tumbled swiftly. He waited and still watched. One competitor dropped out, and another, and another. He put a bid in, 2. Now, when the bids had sunk to $10, he added 5. Someone raised him a 3. He waited a moment, then flung in a $50 jump, and the sack was his, at $1,282. The ass broke out in cheers, then stopped, for he was on his feet, and lifted his hands. He began to speak. I desire to say a word and ask a favour. I'm a speculator in rarities, and I have dealings with persons interested in pneumatics all over the world. I can make a profit on this purchase just as it stands. There is a way I can get your approval whereby I can make every one of these leaden $20 pieces worth its face in gold, and perhaps more. Grant me that approval, and I will give part of my gains to your Mr. Richard, whose invulnerable probity you have just so justly and so cordially recognised tonight. His share shall be $10,000, and I will hand him the money tomorrow. This drew great applause from the house, but the invulnerable probity made Richard blush pretty heavily. However, it went for modesty and did no harm. If you will pass my proposition by a good majority, I would like a 2/3 vote. I regard that as this town's consent, and that is all I ask. Rarities are always helped by any device which will rouse curiosity and compel remark. Now, if I may have your permission to stamp upon the faces of each of these ostensible coins the names of the 18 gentlemen who, 9/10 of the audience were on their feet in a moment, dog and all, and the proposition were carried with a whirlwind of approving applause and laughter. They sat down, and all the symbols, except Dr. Clay Harkness, got up violently protesting against the proposed outrage and threatening to... I beg you not to threaten me, said the stranger calmly. I know my legal rights, and I'm not accused of being accustomed to being frightened by bluster. Applause followed, and he sat down. Dr. Harkness saw an opportunity here. He was one of the 2 very rich men of the place, and Pinkerton was the other. Harkness was proprietor of a mint, that is to say a popular patent medicine. He ran for the legislature on one ticket, and Pinkerton on the other. They were a close race and not one, and getting on every day. Both had strong appetites for money. Each had bought a great tract of land with a purpose. There was going to be a new railway, and each wanted to be in the legislature and help locate the rope to his own advantage. A single mote might make the decision, and with it 2 or 3 fortunes. The estate were large, and Harkness was a daring speculator. He was sitting close to the stranger. He leaned over while one or another of the other symbols were entertaining the house with protests and appeals, and asked in a whisper, "What is your price for the sack?" $40,000. I'll give you 20. No. 25. No. Say 30. The price is $40,000 and not a penny less. All right, I'll give it. We'll come to the hotel at 10 in the morning. I don't want to know. We'll see you privately. Very good. And the stranger got up and said to the house, I'll find it late. The speech of these gentlemen are not without merit, nor without interest, nor without grace. Yet if I may be excused, I will take my leave. I thank you for the great favour which you have shown me in granting my petition. I ask the chair to keep the sack for me until tomorrow, and I'll hand these 3 $500 notes to Mr. Richards. They were passed up to the chair. At 9 I'll call for the sack, and at 11 we'll deliver the rest of the $10,000 to Mr. Richardson in person at his house. Good night. And he slept out and left the audience making vast noises, which were composed of a mixture of cheers and the Mikado song, dog disapproval and the chant, "You are far from being a bad man. Amen." And that's the end of part 3. Well, I didn't expect there to be a 4th part. I thought things were about wrapped up, but I suppose there's this little end plot, which I can kind of respect. I mean, if you're going to do a whole big revenge plot on a town, you might as well be there to see it carried out, huh? That is something I can understand and agree with. Yeah. And now we have the question of, is Richardson going to come clean? And is he not? And the funny thing is, if he does come clean, he probably won't get away with it, because not coming clean in this situation would actually protect him better. At least assuming that note isn't found. Anyway, let's have my drink and we'll see how we get on. Oof. Right. At the home, the Richards had to endure congratulations and compliments until midnight. Then they were left to themselves. They looked a little sad and they sat silent and thinking. Finally, Mary sighed and said, "Do you think we are to blame, Edward? Much to blame?" And her eyes wandered to the accusing triplet of big banknotes lying on the table, where the congratulations had been gloating over them and reverently fingering them. Edward did not answer at once. They brought out a sigh and said hesitatingly, We couldn't help it, Mary. It was ordered. All things are." Mary glanced up and looked at him steadily, but he didn't return the look. Presently she said, I thought congratulations and praises always tasted good, but it seems to me now, Edward. Well, are you going to stay in the bank? No. Resign in the morning by note. It does seem best. Richard bowed his head in his hands and muttered, Before I were not afraid to let oceans of people's money pour through my hands, but Mary, I am so tired. So tired. We'll go to bed. At 9 in the morning, the stranger called for the sack and took it to the hotel in a cab. At 10, Harkness had a talk with him privately. The stranger asked for and got 5 cheques on a Metropolitan Bank, drawn to bearer for $1,500 each, and one for $3,400. He put one of the former in his pocketbook, and the remainder, representing $38,500, he put in an envelope. And with these he added a note, which he wrote after Harkness were gone. At 11 he called the Richards house and knocked. Miss Richards appeared through the shutters and then went and received the envelope, and the stranger disappeared without a word. She came back flushed and a little unsteady on her legs, and gasped out, I'm sure I recognised him. Last night it seemed to me maybe I had seen him somewhere before. He's the man who brought the sack here. I'm almost sure of it. And he is the ostensible Stevenson too, and sold every important citizen in this town with his burglar's secret. Now if he has sent cheques instead of money, we are sold too, after we thought we had escaped. I was beginning to feel fairly comfortable once more after my night's rest. But the look of the envelope makes me sick. It isn't fat enough to be $8,500. Even the largest banknotes makes more bulk than that. Cheques signed by Stevenson. I am resigned to take the $8,500 if I could come in banknotes. It does seem that it was so ordered, Mary. No. Cheques signed by Stevenson. I am resigned to take the $8,500 if it come back in banknotes. For it does seem that it was so ordered, Mary. But I have never had much courage, and I have not the pluck to try to market a cheque signed with a disastrous name. It would be a trap. That man tried to catch me. We escaped somehow or other. Now he's trying a new way. It is cheques. Oh, Edward, it is too bad, she held up her hand. the Jackson began to try. Put in the fire quick, we mustn't be tempted. It's a trick to make the world laugh at us, along with the rest, and give them me since you can't do it. He snatched them and tried to hold his grip till he could get to the stove, but he was human. He was a cashier, and he stopped a moment to make sure of the signature. And he come near to fainting. Found me, Mary, found 'em. They're the same as gold. Oh, how lovely, Edward, why? Signed by a Harkness. What can the mystery of that be, Mary? Edward, do you think? Look here, look at this 15, 34, 3,800, 38,500. Mary, this sack isn't worth $12, and Harkness apparently has paid about par for it. And has all come to us, do you think, instead of 10,000? Why, it looks like it. And the checks are made to bear it, too. Is that good, Edward? What's it for? I need to collect them at some distant bank, I reckon. Perhaps Harkness doesn't want the matter known. What's that, a note? Yes, it was with the cheque. They were in the Stevenson handwriting, but there was no signature. It said, I'm a disappointed man. Your honesty is beyond the reach of temptation. I had a different idea about it, but I wronged you in that, and I beg pardon, and do it sincerely. I honour you, and that is sincere too. This town is not worthy to kiss the hem of your garment, dear sir. I made a square bet with myself that there were 19 debauchable men in your self-righteous community. I've lost. Take the old pot you're entitled to. Richard drew a deep breath, a deep sigh, and said, It seems written with fire. It burns so, Mary. I'm miserable again. I too. Oh dear, I wish to think, Mary, he believes in me. Oh, don't, Edward, I can't bear it. Those beautiful words were deserved, Mary, and God knows I believed I deserved them once. I think I could give the $40,000 for them. I'll put that paper away as representing more than gold and jewels, and keep it always, but now I could not live in the shadow of its accusing presence, Mary. He put it in the fire. A messenger arrived and delivered the envelope. Richard took from it a note and read it. It was from Burgess. You saved me in a difficult time. I saved you last night. It was the cost of a lie, but I made the sacrifice freely, and out of a grateful heart. None of this village knows so well as I know how brave and good and noble you are. At the bottom you cannot respect me, knowing as you do that matter which I am accused, and by the general voice condemned. But I beg that you will at least believe that I am a grateful man, and will help me hear my burden. Signed, Reverend Burgess. Saved once more, and on such terms. He put the note in the fire. I wish I were dead, Mary. I wish her out of it all. Oh, these are bitter, bitter days, Edward. The stabs through their very generosity are so deep, and they come so fast. 3 days before the election, each of 2,000 voters suddenly found themselves in possession of a prized memento. One of the renowned bogus double eagles. Around one of its faces were stamped these words. The remark I made to the poor stranger was. Around the other face were stamped these. Go and reform, sick. Signed, Pinkerton. Thus the entire remaining refuse of the renowned joke was emptied upon a single end, and with calamitous effect, it revived the recent vast laugh and concentrated upon Pinkerton, and Harkness's election were a walkover. Within 24 hours after the Richardsons had received their cheques, their consciousnesses were quieted down, discouraged. The old couple were learning to reconcile themselves to the sin which they had now committed, but they would learn now that the sin takes on a new and real terrors when there seems a chance that it's going to be found out. This gives it a fresh and more substantial and important aspect. At church, the morning sermon was of the usual pattern, with the same old thing, said in the same old way. They heard them 1,000 times and found them innocuous and next to meaningless, and easy to sleep under. But now it was different. The sermon seemed to bristle with accusation. It seemed aimed straight and specifically at people who were concealing deadly sins. After church, they got away from the mob of congratulations as soon as they could, and hurried homeward, chilled to the bone, they did not know what. Vague, shadowy, indefinite fears, and by chance they caught a glimpse of attention with their nod of recognition. He hadn't seen it, but they did not know that. What could his conduct mean? It might mean a dozen dreadful things. It was possible that he knew Richards could have cleared him of guilt in that bygone time, and had been silently waiting for a chance to even up accounts. At home, in their distress, they got to imagine that their servant might have been in the next room listening when Richard revealed the secret to his wife, that he knew of Burgess's innocence. Next, Richard began to imagine that he had heard the swish of a gown in there at the time. Next, he was sure he had heard it. They would call Sarah in on pretext and watch her face. If she'd been betraying them to Mr. Burgess, it would show in her manner. They asked her some questions which were so random and incoherent and seemingly purposeless that the girl felt sure the old people's minds had been affected by her sudden good fortune. The sharp and watchful gaze which they bent upon her frightened her, and that completed the business. She blushed, she became nervous and confused, and the old people these were plain signs of guilt. Guilt of some fearful sort or other. Without doubt she would a spy and a traitor. When they were alone again, they began to piece many unrelated things together and get horrible results out of the combination. When things had gotten about the worst, Richard delivered of a sudden gasp, and his wife asked, "Oh, what? What is it?" "A note. Burgess's note. Its language was sarcastic. I see it now," he quoted. "At bottom you cannot respect me, knowing as you do of that matter which I am accused. Oh, it's perfectly plain now. God help me, he knows that I know. You see the ingenuity of the phrasing. It was a trap, and like a fool I walked into it. And Mary, oh, it is dreadful. I know what you're going to say. He didn't return your transcript to the prevent and test remarks. No, kept it to destroy us with him. Mary is exposed to some already. I know it well. I saw in a dozen faces after church. Oh, he wouldn't answer a nod of recognition. He knew what he had been doing." In the night the doctor was called. The news went around in the morning that the old couple were rather seriously ill, prostrated by the exhausting excitement of growing out of their great windfall. "Congratulations in the late hours," the doctor said. The town was sincerely distressed, for these old people were about all it had left to be proud of now. 2 days later the news were worse. The old couple were delirious and were doing strange things. By witness of the nurses, Richard had exhibited checks for $8,500? No, for an amazing sum, $38,500. What could be the explanation of this gigantic piece of luck? The following day the nurses had more news, and wonderful. They concluded to hide the checks, lest harm come to them, but when they searched they were gone from under the patient's pillow, vanished away. The patient said, "Let the pillow alone, what do you want?" "We thought it best to find the checks. You will never see them again, they are destroyed. They came from Satan. I saw the L brand on them, and I knew they were sent to betray me to sin." And he fell to gabbling strange and dreadful things, which were not clearly understandable, which the doctor admonished them to keep to themselves. Richards were right. The checks were never seen again. A nurse must have talked in her sleep, for in 2 days the forbidden gabblings were the property of the town, and they were of a surprising sort. They seemed to indicate that Richards had been a claimant for the sack himself, and that Burgess had concealed that fact and then maliciously betrayed it. Burgess was taxed with this and stoutly denied it, and he said it was not fair to attach the weight of chatter to a sick old man who were out of his mind. Still, suspicion were in the air, and there were much talk. After a day or two, it was reported that Mrs. Richards' delirious deliveries were getting the duplicates her husband's. Suspicion flamed up in a conviction now, and the town's pride in the purity of its own one undisputed important citizen began to dim down and flicker towards extinction. 6 days passed, and come more news. The old couple were dying. Richard's mind's cleared in his latest hour, and he sent for Burgess. Burgess said, "Let the room be cleared. I think he wishes to say something in privacy." "No," said Richard. "I want witnesses. I want you all to hear my confession so that I may die like a man and not a dog. I was clean, artificially like the rest, and like the rest, I fell when temptation came. I signed the lie and claimed the miserable sack. Mr. Burgess remembered that I had done him a service, and in gratitude and ignorance, he suppressed my claim and saved me. You know the thing that was charged against Burgess years ago? My testimony and mine alone could have cleared him. I was a coward and left him to suffer disgrace. No, Mr. Richards, my servant betrayed my secret to him. No one has betrayed anything to me. And then he did a natural, justifiable thing. He repented of the saving kindness which he had done me and exposed me as I deserve. Never, I make an oath, out of my heart I forgive him." Burgess' impassioned protestations fell upon deaf ears. The dying man passed away without knowing that once more he had done poor Burgess a wrong. The old wife died that night. The last of the sacred 19 had fallen prey to the fiendish sack. The town was stripped of the last rag of its ancient glory. This morning were not shown, but it would deep. By act of the legislator, upon prayer and petition, Hadleyburg were allowed to change its name to, well, never mind what, I will not give it away, and leave one word out of the motto for that many generations had graced the town's official seal. It is an honest town once more, and the man will have to rise early to catch it napping. The former motto, as it was stated, and this one's a bit weird because it's done in like a little, there's drawings of the town seal, but what the former motto was apparently, "Lead us not into temptation," and the revised motto is, "Lead us into temptation." And that is the end of the piece. Gonna have a quick drink of water to wet my throat, and then we'll go over and do a little bit of discussion and contemplation of it. But since we are doing discussion of it, let's move over to a more comfortable setting, shall we? Yeah, actually, no, what am I doing? Terribly rude. We've got guests. I should be thinking of you. Let's move over to a different, more comfortable setting. Here we are. So, having finished The Corruption of Hadleyburg, there are a few things I want to note about this. First, it's a very interesting sort of morality tale. I mean, it's clearly a morality tale, obviously. You know, the whole thing is run around the various actions of the seemingly important people in town and how they're all very easily led into temptation. But it takes a very strange stance on what is necessary for a man to avoid temptation and to keep good morals, namely that he has to be tried by the world. It's quite a good take too, really. A person who's never tried or tested, who never has their morals, contested by anybody, is never going to be able to hold to his convictions. You have to some extent or other, debate with people, have yourself tried, have yourself tested. And while I was writing it, I stand by and not expecting a little twist at the end, I do think it was a good one. Because the one man who was spared revelation of his sins, who never really seemed to have his morals tested, was so tested by it that he broke, and in the end gave his confession. He come clean because he was tested. He had a chance to get away with it, and he didn't. Which, I mean, I can sort of respect, although I don't think I'd have done the same thing. But then I am a disreputable rat who doesn't hold particularly to morals, so that's by the by. I also do like the little, it was badly delivered because I was trying to make it out on the little town shields that were done, but the change in the town model from lead us not into temptation to lead us into temptation is quite a little, it's a little hat. I like it. I think it's good. Yeah, again, this is some more Twain sort of having, I don't know, he's got an atypical view of morals and morality. If anyone ever heard me do his little essay on the decay of the art of lying, where he makes a strong argument for practicing lying more thoughtfully and actively, because it's a good thing to do if you do it well. That's another similar piece where he argues again in favour of a generally considered sin or vice, and here he argues against standard virtue. It's interesting, really. Yeah. I don't think there's too much more to say about this, although I do like the little. I would say just a little mention of getting the $40,000 from one of the people who was accused. That really does strike me well. Well, I guess it's also interesting that he did stick by his promise once he took the bribe. He was bribed not to ruin one man's political career, and so after taking the bribe, he ruined the other man's. There's a certain honour among thieves there, although a dishonourable sort of honour, which I respect. But yeah, I don't think I've got much more to say on the matter, though. I mean, if any of you have anything to say, I'd be happy to hear it and discuss. But otherwise, I suppose I will see if there is anyone around to raid into. If I can remember how the buttons work. There we are. There we are, raid. Yeah. I'll give you 5 seconds to say anything if you had anything to say, or you should be forever holding your silence. 3, 2, 1. Okay, let's raid someone. Yeah, I thought I would go out on a screen more suitable to my followers if I could. And now I'm struggling to figure out how to find specific people on the app to raid into, because I'm bad at this. Oh, okay, apparently no one who I follow is currently live. Does anyone in chat have anyone who they follow who's live who's worth raiding into? Because otherwise I think I'm just going to be ending stream the normal way. I need to follow more people. I guess it's one. Yeah. Oh. Oh. Fair enough then. And I guess this heady 3 followers or 3 viewers is going to go to waste to be expanded into the ether. A terrible shame for all the people at Twitch chat, but such is the nature of things sometimes. Our virtue is tested, and we find ourselves growing to the challenge or wanting. Yeah, I do want to say thank you for both of you for showing up and chatting today. Yeah, well, it is the downside of having all your friends be in the same place as you. But the downside of not doing that is I spend all day sitting around waiting and having nothing to do. I have to go out and do walks and stuff. Go outside. Gross. I mean, what am I saying? I'm a terrible rat. I'm in this library all day. Blah. No. Yeah. Again, thank you to the both of you for showing up. I do genuinely appreciate it. Oh no, not the outside. Well, a broken character. Damn, I don't like to do that. I mean, I'm a horrible rat who would love to see the outside. I've been stuck in this library for almost 2 years. Blah, blah, I've fallen apart. My whole act is going to pieces. I'm ending stream now. Nah. But yeah, seriously, thank you to the both of you for showing up and chatting. I do genuinely appreciate it. And yeah, I will see if I can find any books of a more sort of gothic bent. I'm trying to see if I've done anything that might be... Yeah, if you are looking for something in the meantime, I did read... Oh, God, what was it called? Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Bye-bye. What was it? That's it. Olala by Robert Louis Stevenson I read, which is a little... That's an interesting one. The VODs are all on my YouTube channel if you're interested, and what was it? That one's sort of... It's odd because it's sort of a vampire story, but maybe not. And there's something to it. I'd recommend that if you're interested in gothic stuff. But yeah, otherwise I'll let you know if I find anything of a similar bent. And yeah, thank you again for showing up. That is a good idea and smart. Definitely something that I should be thinking of more. Yeah, I can link my YouTube channel. I definitely can do that. I definitely have the link already prepared because I'm a professional streamer. I'm definitely not struggling to get my YouTube open. I'm lying. I don't know why I'm lying to you. But yeah, that's I just feel compelled to lie. It's my nature as a rat, you see. Telling the truth is against my code of ethics and virtues, etc., etc. No, that's wrong. There we are. Ooh. Just to give you guys some idea as to how bad my PC is, by the way, this is me fumbling, not because I have clicked on any wrong links, because it's taken this long for things to load. There we are. Whoop. Okay, yeah. There's a link to the YouTube for anyone who is interested. I upload all of my VODs there, even the bad ones. So if you're interested in any of that, feel free. But yeah, and thank you again for showing up and chatting. It's always good to have company. And I think, yeah, without further ado, I shall bid you all ta-ra.